Well, let's talk about some college basketball. We got some interesting games going on Monday night. Starting off with the St. John's versus Boston College game, Brett. And St. John's is a slight favorite at 1.5 points, but I think Boston College is going to get this win because they've had some more tried and true competition. They lost to Villanova, but it was less than 10 points. It was a 9 point game. Then they got a win against Rhode Island, whereas you look at who St. John's has played, they've played St. Peter's and LaSalle. So while they're 2-0 and Boston College is 1-1, I like the strength of schedule that I've seen from Boston College so far. So in this toss-up game that it's even on the money line at minus 108 aside, I'm going to take Boston College.
All right, fair enough. I have no idea in that game, Higgins. So I think it's a toss up as well. But if you're gonna watch, you might as well have some action on it. It's part of a great slate, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's at a neutral site too. It's part of the Bubbleville series that's going on. This is taking place in Connecticut. So although it's not necessarily a home game for Boston College, and there's not really fans that are able to go to these events, Connecticut is still a shorter travel for Boston College, so you'd have to imagine they seem a little more at home there than, say, St. John's. But I mean, it's pretty much 50-50 in the middle for them.
Yeah, I I guess it's a little bit closer to Boston. I'm not really sure. We'd have to calculate it. It's gonna be close. It's gonna be close there in Connecticut. But I'm gonna be on a different game tomorrow, Higgins. Stanford, Alabama is a big one in my book. Javon Quinterly, the big transfer for Alabama, getting in their rotation this year. Herb Jones is still there, a good player for Bama. John Perry as well. Stanford, up and coming team, Zaire Williams, the true freshman, headlines their roster, Higgins. And in this one, I'm taking Stanford in the points plus 1.5. I think that's where the value is in this game because I think this one's a toss up as well. So I'll take the team getting a point and a half here.
Now, Alabama has played one game against Jacksonville State. Stanford's played against no one so far this year, so I'm trying to stay away from some of those games that have a little bit of that mystery. But how do you feel about some of those games where we have some opponents that may have one, two, maybe even three games, depending on how far they went this weekend, and then some teams that haven't played yet?
Honestly, if their competition's Jacksonville State at this point, Higgins, it's probably an advantage for Stanford to have not played because there's no film. So, Stanford's seen some of Bama's sets. They've seen how, Quinterly is going to be part of. I mean, he's their lead guard now. Kira Lewis was just drafted out of Alabama in the NBA draft. I guess it was only like a week ago, probably, maybe like 2 weeks ago. But uh, he was drafted, and they have a new lead guard, Higgins. So seeing that on film, seeing the plays they run for him, what hand he likes to go to, probably an advantage for Stanford because they haven't seen Zaire Williams on film yet, at this level at least, or in
That's
that offense.
That's a very fair point. And just looking at the stats from that Alabama, Quinterly led the team in assists, but he only had 3 assists. So, what does that say about the ball movement that Alabama has going on right now? Might tip their hand a little bit. Who knows? But I'm actually going to be on a different team from Alabama, Brett. I'm going to be on this Auburn versus UCF game now. As soon as I said I try to stay away from those games that have someone that hasn't played a game yet, I'm on a game that has a team that hasn't played a game yet. UCF has not tipped off yet against anybody. Auburn is 1-1 on the season after they lost to Gonzaga, but they played well against St. Joe's. So I'm going to take Auburn here, considering that Bruce Pearl's team did look pretty good. I did watch some of that St. Joe's game. I did not watch the Gonzaga game that Auburn played uh, the next day after that. But Gonzaga's the top team in the nation. I mean, it's a hard task to take on them, especially early in the season. Auburn they scored over 90 points in both. Or sorry, Auburn scored 90 points in their first game, got 90 scored on them in their second game by Gonzaga. So defense could be a little worrisome, but I think Auburn's going to get it done against UCF. So I'm taking Auburn on the spread at plus 1.5.
Yeah, I mean, Auburn, I don't know. It's a tough spot. We'll have to see how Auburn rebounds after that loss, but I agree with you. Gonzaga's, no one expected them to win that game anyway, so no harm, no foul there, Higgins.
Absolutely. I mean, Gonzaga's Gonzaga.
Right, they're the top team this year, I think. Them, Baylor, and honestly Nova, but Nova looked shaky in that Bot Tech loss, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that was a surprise the way Villanova played in that game. I watched that, and maybe it's because they didn't have a lot of notice of playing Virginia Tech, so the preparation wasn't quite there. But not the outcome you expected in that.
No, it was a hopefully, I expect them to react pretty well moving forward. I think they'll be a strong team. They're one of the better teams in college basketball this year, and they're really well coached. So, they're veteran. They're young talent. They're a machine Villanova right now.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Let's move on though. Out west a little bit. You're eyeing this Pacific Nevada game.
Yeah, Higgins, I'm looking at Pacific Nevada. I'm looking at Wyoming, Texas Southern. Those are some small games I'm looking at. I just think the spreads are a little too small because the opponents of Wyoming and Nevada have played pretty well. But I think Wyoming and Nevada have outperformed their own expectations. And I think that's being overlooked here. I think people are like, oh, Texas Southern, played Oklahoma State pretty tough on the road. They lost a tough game in their first game as well. So they're probably going to play Wyoming tough. Well, it's tough to go to Laramie. That's at altitude. You know, no one. You get up to play Oklahoma State personally, Higgins. I think that's a fact. Like when you're Texas Southern, that's a big game for you. To go to Wyoming, that's a much smaller game for you. It's not the same hype train.
It's a bit
Um,
colder.
yeah, and I think the same thing applies for Pacific. Like you get up for your season opener, now you got to go play Nevada. It's just not the same. And Nevada's a program that over the last few years has been there, done that. Steve Alford's won everywhere he's been, so I expect the winning to continue at Nevada, even in what's expected to be slightly a down year. But hey, they're 2-0 and they already beat Nebraska, Higgins. So why not go out there and beat Pacific by two possessions? That's all we need, two possessions.
So you're going to take the spread with each of these?
I am. I'm going to be on Nevada minus 4.5, Wyoming minus 5.5. Take the spread with both of them. I think the spread's a little too small.
Alrighty, alrighty. I got two other picks as well. Eastern Kentucky Xavier. I'm gonna be on Eastern Kentucky plus 15 here because I think that's just a little too big of a spread. Eastern Kentucky 2-0. They have two decent wins, uh, each by 10 points or more. And then Xavier, they are 3-0, but their wins were a lot closer. So I think that that trend's going to continue. Xavier's probably still going to get the win, but I don't expect it to be by 15 points. I think that spread's just too large, so I'm going to take the underdog in that one. And then the other spread that I'm going to be on is Loyola Marymount versus Minnesota. Now, Brett, we've seen this on a few of the schedules of other teams. Before the podcast, you mentioned it with Nevada's schedule is very similar to this, where it's back-to-back games against the same team. Well, Loyola Marymount in Minnesota, they're playing the second of a doubleheader. The first game was on Saturday. The second game is going to be on Monday night. And Minnesota beat Loyola Marymount by 15 points in the first game. There was not a spread for the first game. So the spread comes out now, 14.5. I think they're expecting a pretty similar game, similar spread because 15-point win, 14.5-point spread. Well, I expect Minnesota, the bigger program, the bigger name, bigger conference, to make the proper adjustments against the team that they had just seen, and they'll be able to stop some things that worked for Loyola Marymount. They'll be able to expand on some things that worked for them, and maybe they win by 20 this time. So I'm going to take Minnesota minus 14.5 in that one.
I'm going to be honest, Higgins. I can't bet against LMU because they have my favorite player in college basketball. And I'd also be lying if I said I knew his name, but he's got the best hair. He wears 34. They were rocking those baby blues, Higgins. He looked fantastic on the court. He was draining threes. He's my favorite.
One thing's for sure, if he went to a Minnesota high school, he would have made the best hair squad that they do in Minnesota for high school hockey.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Would have definitely made that all hair squad, no doubt about that. But yeah, so those are our picks for college basketball right there, and there's plenty of other games going on Monday night, and that's the way that college basketball is going to be for a while now, with 20 or more games basically every single night. We had to cut down quite a few. There's some other ranked ones. North Carolina plays on Monday night, Brett. There's going to be some good games as well, but these are the 7 games that you and I decided to pick.
Yeah, these are the games we're on, but I'm gonna be tuning in starting at noon with Texas Davidson for sure. So, like you said, lots of basketball to choose from, Higgins.